Welcome to today's economics lesson. My name is Leah Mofokeng. This lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. Today we're going to look at the main topic of economic pursuits. So under economic pursuits, there will be subtopics that we're going to look at. So take note that the topic of economic pursuit is a paper 1 topic. So what we're going to do today is for paper 1. Questions that when you are preparing for the prelim exam and the final exam, questions from today's lessons, you will find them in question 1, question 3, question 4, and question 6 of the question papers. So we will also look at the following subtopics. We will look at the North-South divide. We will look at industrial development policies. We will also look at regional development policies, and we will also look at South Africa's initiatives or endeavors for regional development. There is terminology that you need to know. This terminology will help you when you answer question 1 questions, and it will also help you when you answer data response questions, which you'll find in section B of the prelim exam papers and the final exam papers. So this terminology, I'm not going to explain it now. As we go through the lessons, I will explain all of these concepts. But for now, I want you to take note that you need to know what is the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. You also need to know what the term beneficiation means. You also need to know what industrial development zones mean. Okay, so this terminology will also help you to understand this particular topic. You also need to know what is special economic zone, what is special development initiatives, and what is corridors. So I will explain everything. So you need to also know what is the North-South divide and what is industrial development and regional development. So let's get started. North-South divide. What is a North-South divide? Here we will be looking at a comparison between the North countries and the South countries. North-South divide refers to the economic division between developed and developing countries. So when you look at developed countries, we're simply referring to the North countries. When you look at developing countries, we're simply looking at the South countries. So there is a division between developing and developed countries, or between South countries and North countries. Hence we call it North-South divide. When it comes to certain issues of the economy, these countries, they differ. Okay, let's continue. These countries are classified between developed and developing based on their economic performance. So for 8 marks in section B, you can be asked to compare the North countries with the South countries. So the North countries, they comprise of the first world countries and the second world countries, whereas the South countries, they comprise of third world countries. So examples of first world countries, you find that you have your USA, your Canada, Australia, your Japan, and etc. I cannot name all of them. And your second world countries, you'll find your Romania, Russia, China, and the others. So both the first world and the second world countries are categorized as the North countries or the developed countries. We also have third world countries. These third world countries are called the South countries. So what you will find, you will realize that the third world countries comprise of developing countries in Africa, comprise of developing countries in Asia, comprises of developing countries in Latin America, comprises of developing countries in Australia. As much as Australia is regarded as a first world country as being developed and as being classified as the country from the north, but in Australia, there are developing countries, so which fall under the South. So what I want you to understand is that when we look at the world map, it doesn't mean that countries from the north, they belong in the northern hemisphere, and countries in the south, they belong in the southern hemisphere. No, you might find that there are countries which are regarded as north countries, but you find them in the southern hemisphere. There are countries which are found in the southern hemisphere, but they are developed. They belong to be the north countries. I will use an example here. Look at Australia and New Zealand. They are categorized as part of the north, but when you look at the world map, you find that they are found in the southern hemisphere, but they are developed. It doesn't mean that because they are found in the southern hemisphere, they are developing. No, economically they are developed, but their location is that you will find them in the southern hemisphere, whereas they are the north countries. Okay, then let's start with the comparison. When we compare these particular countries, we need to look at the unequal standard of living. Obviously, the standard of living for countries in the north and south is not the same. We also have to look at globalization challenges. We also have to look at issues that impact on the environment. So here is the comparison. When we compare, we must look at the standard of living. So according to our 2021 examination guideline that we are still using now in 2022, when we do the comparison under the standard of living, we need to look at the real GDP per capita. So when you look at north countries, they have access to income. They have more income than the countries in the south. So that is why their real GDP per capita is high. And when you look at the South countries, they have a low real GDP per capita. They have less income. Even the workers in that country, they're earning less and they can't access enough money. So we look at life expectancy. Life expectancy refers to the number of years that a person is expected to live. So because people in the north, they have more income, they can access better health facilities. For example, if one is having a heart problem, one can afford to go for a heart transplant because the person has money. So they are exposed to better health services. That is why they are not vulnerable to illnesses and diseases. So they don't die early. They have a longer lifespan. So their life expectancy is longer. But when you compare them with people in the South countries or developing countries, they earn less income. Remember, their per capita income is less. So they don't have money to afford basic health services. And as a result, they also are exposed to health services that are not of a higher standard. So they are vulnerable to diseases and illnesses. So they have a short lifespan as compared to North countries. Let's move to education level or the literacy level. Because of a high income, high per capita income, the people in the countries from the north, they have access to better education. Their learners or their children, they finish primary schooling, secondary schooling, and they also have access to tertiary education. So the number of people who can read, write, and count is higher. But you look at South countries, because they lack income, they can't even afford better education. So the number of people who cannot read, write, or count is high. We have a high dropout level in secondary schooling and even at tertiary schooling. So the level of literacy for countries in the south is low, but for countries in the north is high. Let's move and look at another category. Another category that we must use for this comparison is globalization inequalities. Under globalization inequalities, the examination guideline is guiding us that we should look at issues of poverty, we should look at issues of economic growth, production, and trade. So always remember, North countries have money, have enough income. So the level of poverty will be less because people in these countries can afford to satisfy their basic needs and services because there's also high employment rate. But when you look at countries in the south, they are very poor. The standard of living is less. They can't even, there are those who cannot even manage to satisfy their basic needs and services. Okay, so let's look at economic growth. Countries from the south, countries from the north, they are highly industrialized. They have many industries. So as a result, remember that industries, they produce goods in larger quantities. So the more goods are produced, the more the economic growth will improve or will grow. So countries from the north have a high economic growth rate. But when you look at countries from the south, which rely on primary sector in most of the cases, they rely on agriculture and mining. So their economic growth is less. They have even less industries. So let's look at production and trade. Countries from the north, they rely on manufacturing. They process raw materials into final goods. They export final products. Whereas when you look at countries from the south, they rely more on primary sector. They rely more on raw material. They export raw materials from agriculture and from mining. And when you export such raw materials, you don't get enough money because they are raw, they are not transformed, they are not processed. So when the north countries export manufactured goods, they get more profit because they sell a final product. Again, what makes countries from the north to compete with other countries is because of they subsidize agricultural production. When agricultural produce are subsidized, they are dumped in other countries and they are sold at a lower price. So other countries, they can't compete because of the subsidy. You look at South countries, they lack subsidies. Sometimes even if the government provides subsidies, sometimes these subsidies are removed after a certain period of time, and our industries in the mining and in agriculture, they can't compete because of this lack of subsidies. So hence you'll find that we still buy agricultural produce from other countries because they are subsidized and they are affordable. Let's look at the issues of the environment. Remember I mentioned that North countries are highly industrialized. They produce goods on mass production in bulk, in larger quantities. As they are doing this, they are burning fossil fuel, which damages the environment. Because of a high rate of industries that they have a tendency of polluting the air, the water, etc. So when their businesses are releasing greenhouse gases which are trapped in the ozone layer, this causes challenges even to the countries in the south because we will start suffering from climate changes. So climate changes that you see now are mainly caused by those industries in the north countries. So this is all that you need to know about the North-South division. Let's move to the next subtopic of industrial and regional development. Remember the terminology. I said to you, you need to learn to understand certain terms and concepts so that this particular concept, when you do your section A questions, you are able to master it. When you do the data response question where they ask you to briefly describe this particular term, you'll be able to master those terms. So the first one is industrial development. What is industrial development? Industrial development refers to policies that are aimed at encouragement of industrial investment and industrial efficiency. You need to know the key concept in a particular terminology so that it will help you to remember. So industrial development refers to those policies that are aimed at encouragement of industrial investment and greater industrial efficiency. In simple terms, industrial development refers to establishment of industries in a country. So these policies are determined where? At the central level, at the national level. So you need to know this terminology. So now what you also need to know is the reasons why do we need industrial development. For 8 marks, you can be asked to briefly discuss or explain the reason for industrial development, or the examiner can even change. Instead of writing the reason, the examiner can say, explain briefly the aims of industrial development. So you will need 4 full sentences for 2 marks. 4 full sentences for 2 marks. Then you will get your 8 marks if it's an 8-mark question. Let's quickly look at the reason why we need industrial development. Number 1, we need industrial development so that we can exploit the world economy to trade and also acquire knowledge. So if our industries can be able to produce goods, sell them to other countries, as we are trading with other countries, our businesses will also gain some sort of knowledge as to how to market, how to produce certain products. Another one is to maintain macroeconomic stability. Do you still remember your public sector topic, whereby you studied and you also learned about the macroeconomic objectives of the government? You need to learn how to link information from one topic to another. When you were doing macroeconomic objectives of the state, your teachers taught you that the government wants to achieve full employment, wants to achieve foreign exchange stability, price stability, economic equity. So the government can be able to obtain or achieve those objectives through industrialization. If we can have more industries established, then the government will be able to achieve macroeconomic objectives or macroeconomic stability. One reason is that industrial development, we want to achieve high rates of savings and investment. Remember, these industries, when they are established, it will be due to the reason that there is an investment. Where are investments generated from? They are generated from savings. So investors will have to acquire or borrow money, for example, from different institutions such as the banks to establish these industries. And as a result, at the end, when the very same industries are making profit, the profit that is not spent will be saved where? In the financial institution. So hence we are saying that industrialization will also improve what? Savings and investment in the country. Another reason why we need industries is because industries produce goods on what? Large scale. So we want to see large scale manufacturing, large scale agriculture, large scale mining, and large scale service production. Remember, when goods are produced on a large scale, it leads to economies of scale. Costs of production are reduced. It becomes cheaper for production. So you only need 4 points, but I will also explain the others. So this industrial development will also lead to diversification of the economy. Instead of focusing on traditional mining and agriculture, which is primary sector, the economy can focus on both primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. That is what diversification is all about. Then, as a result of this diversification, our businesses will be able to produce more for the export market. They will produce and sell their products abroad. And this, as a result, will create more job opportunities. We also need industries to develop and maintain appropriate incentives to attract investors. If we say that we need industries in South Africa, the government should also provide financial incentives which will attract investors to come to South Africa and establish industries. And this issue of financial incentives, we will do it in the next lesson. Lastly, industrial development contribute to the industrial development of African continent. If South Africa has more industries, this will also benefit Africa as a whole. Then remember I mentioned that industrial development policies are designed, these policies are designed at a national level or at a central level. So there should be policies that are used to or are implemented to achieve industrialization in South Africa. So you need to know this, because for 2 marks, you can be asked to name or list them. We have National Industrial Policy Framework. You can call it NIPF. If you are asked to name, you can even use the acronyms. We don't use acronyms in question 1.3 when you are given the description of the terms. When you're supposed to give us the concept, you can't give us an acronym or abbreviation. But in section B, where you are asked to list, you can give us an acronym. And then we also have what is called Industrial Policy Action Plan, and you need to know what the two means. Okay, let's look at National Industrial Policy Framework, the NIPF. You can be asked for 8 marks, you can be asked to briefly discuss the aims of the National Industrial Policy Framework. You tell us that this particular policy, it aims to make the economy more diverse. Remember, diverse by being primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. All these sectors together, if they produce, they will export more goods. And if exports increase, we will have an export-led economic growth. Economic growth will increase or improve because of exports. Another aim is to make industrialization more intensive in the long run, so that even the next generation will benefit. Then other aim is to promote development of labor-intensive industries. With labor-intensive industries, we mean that these industries will rely on less technology, less machinery, so that most of the work is done by human beings. If we use capital-intensive industries, it means that there will be retrenchment. If we rely on capital-intensive industries, there will be retrenchments. There won't be jobs, because most of the jobs will be done by technology and machinery. But if we want to create more jobs through industrialization, then this should promote labor-intensive industries which use less technology, less machinery, but more workers. This part I like about our national industrial development policies is that there are people who are marginalized due to the apartheid government. There were people who were marginalized. They didn't participate in the economy, and there are those areas in South Africa that are also, they were neglected. But through industrialization, we will see people who were disadvantaged and marginalized participating as shareholders in these industries, as top management in these particular industries. And those areas which were neglected, they will also be developed. Lastly, one of the aims of NIPF is to increase potential for large-scale production, which I mentioned the benefit of it. It will result in what? It will result in more goods produced at lower cost. It will be cheaper to produce. Okay, then let's look at IPAP, another industrial development policy. IPAP, or Industrial Policy Action Plan. What is it? It is a policy and action plan which is designed to help South Africa built what? Its industrial base in critical sectors of production, but it focusing on what? Value added manufacturing. Remember what I mentioned about countries which rely on mainly agriculture and mining, but with EPAP the focus is on value added manufacturing. If you change grapes into wine or grapes into 100% juice, that means you have added value. Okay, if you change sand into glass, you have added value to the natural resource. So this is what EPAP is I want to achieve in the long run. Again, Industrial Policy Action Plan is a key industrial development plan over a rolling 3-year period with a 10-year outlook, which means that after every 3 years, the policy is revived, but the outlook is for 10 years. That's why you'll find that we have 2020/2021 EPAP. 2021/2022 EPAP, 2022/2023 EPAP. So after every 3 years, these plans are reviewed to check if they are implemented, are they efficient and effective. We now know that at the level, at the higher level, the national level or central level, the NIPF and the EPAP have been formulated as the policies. Then we also have to look at the strategies which will be used to implement these policies. So we have the National Research and Development Strategy, feel free to call it NRDS. We also have IMS, Integrated Manufacturing Strategy. You can be asked for 2 marks to list this. You need to know them, the industrial development strategies. But one tip from me is that if you forget what the I stand for, just write the acronym, because sometimes you'll find that you have written industrial manufacturing strategy instead of integrated manufacturing strategy. You won't be awarded marks because it is wrong. So if you have forgotten what the I, for example, stand for, just write IMS, and because it's a list type of a question, you will be given marks or awarded marks. Okay. But briefly, we're going to look at these industrial development strategies. The NRDS, or the National Research and Development Strategy, it is an indicator-based and it rests on 3 pillars. I want you to remember these pillars. It's innovation. You know, with innovation, that's when we focus even on being creative and coming with new products, that like the electric car that is in the market. That is innovation. But innovation does not go alone. It goes hand in hand with science. It goes hand in hand with engineering and technology. So advanced technology is needed for innovation of new things and products. But it doesn't make sense if we have innovation, we have science and technology without human resource. So that is when we will require what? A high number of technicians, high number of IT specialists, high number of engineers, high number of mathematicians. So human resource is also important in the National Research and Development Strategy. And we also want what? Transformation, so that we don't keep on relying on old methods of production. And then lastly, the third pillar is creating an effective government, science and technology system. And we know that the Minister of Science and Technology in South Africa is ensuring that learners should be exposed as early as in primary schools, in secondary schools, and in tertiary schools. They should be exposed to science, to technology. Hence, you see that science is regarded as the most important subject even at our schools. Then let us look at the IMS, the Integrated Manufacturing System. Integrated Manufacturing strategy. So don't make that mistake that I made, because you won't get your marks. So if you are expected to explain what IMS is, please mention that the main focus is on developing global competitiveness of South African manufacturing enterprises. So these industries that we want to be established in South Africa, they should be able to compete globally. And this is implemented by DTIC. What is DTIC in full? It is the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. It is no longer called the Department of Trade and Industry. We have added this C, Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Okay. It is the one that oversees industrial development in South Africa. So this strategy, IMS, applies to all processes that transforms natural products into manufactured products. I also emphasize that the emphasis is to transform natural products into manufactured products. Why? When we export them, value is added, and the industries can be able to even make more profit by selling manufactured products. It involves cross-cutting issues such as technology, advanced technology is needed, skilled workers, skilled human resources needed. So the human resources in South Africa need to be developed, be educated, exposed to certain critical skills. And it also depends on access to finance. Funding is also needed. It also depend on infrastructure. Remember, we do have investors who are interested in investing in South Africa by establishing industries, but you find that the area that is targeted does not have proper infrastructure, communication, railway lines, water, electricity, etc. So the IMS involves such infrastructure. It also concentrates on key input sectors such as transport, telecommunication, and energy. With the high prices of petrol and diesel, this is going to have a high and negative impact on industrialization. So the IMS prioritizes certain growth sectors such as tourism, agriculture, information technology, and cultural industries. So there is that area of diversification. Regional development. I want to share a history of South Africa's regional development with you. What happened is that in the past, there were only 4 main regions in South Africa which were developed. Certain areas in South Africa were neglected. So these 4 areas that I'm going to share with you, that is where we found that there is a concentration of industries. More industries were built or centralized in those regions. That is why today, when you look at these regions, you'll find that they are overpopulated. People flocked from as far as Limpopo, KZN, and Lesotho, seeking job opportunities in these areas because they are the ones which were highly industrialized and developed. So those areas are Johannesburg, Pretoria, Tshwane. They are Durban, Pinetown. They are Cape Town, Metropole. They are Port Elizabeth, Kruger, Uitenhage. So industries were concentrated there. Hence, most of the people flocked in these areas looking for jobs. Why? Why do we have this uneven development of regions? Why only these 4 regions being developed? One reason was because of unequal spending on regional development. When the national budget was developed, it focused more money was allocated to such regions. Another one is because of uneven distribution of natural resources across the regions and the shortage of skills across South Africa. That is what led to the 4 main regions to be developed. What is regional development? What is regional development? For 2 marks. Regional development takes place when we have policies that are aimed at increasing the economic livelihood of specific regions. Industrial development focused on South Africa as a nation, as a country. Within South Africa, there are regions which need to be developed. So when we have these policies, each region has its own policies. So these policies, when they are implemented and they improve the economic livelihood of these geographical areas, then we will say that this is regional industrial development, or you can simply call it regional development. It has aims. You need to know the aims of regional development because you can be asked to briefly explain them or to briefly discuss them. Number one, you will need to know that regional development reduces unequal development of economic activities. Remember what I mentioned earlier. Economic development happened in 4 areas that I mentioned where concentration or centralization of industries took place. So with regional development, we want to do away with that so that we reduce unequal development of economic activities so that if possible, all regions can be developed, or all those regions which were neglected can be developed. It aims at stimulating development in poorer areas. There are poorer areas in South Africa which need development, and regional development policies will be utilized to achieve that. Another aim is to implement and coordinate the implementation of national and regional industrial policies. So these policies are available. They must be put in place. They must be utilized. Another thing, we want regional development so that we prevent new imbalances from emerging. We had past imbalances where industries were concentrated in the 4 areas only, but we don't need new imbalances to occur. That can be achieved through the regional development policies. Let us look at South Africa's initiatives or endeavors for regional development. We want to see how South Africa practically is implementing its regional and industrial policies. And take note that this is a possible essay. We have other possible essays in paper 1. This is a paper 1 possible essay. It is one of those essays. I am not saying it is the one that will be in your prelim or final exam, but it is one of the essays that might be asked. And in which question can you find it? In question 6 of paper 1 of the prelim or final exam. When you discuss this particular essay, let's say for 26 marks, you need to concentrate on 4 aspects. You need to concentrate on special development initiatives, industrial development zones, corridors, special economic zones. Let me take you through these particular initiatives. Number 1, we have SDI. You can call it SDI if you have forgotten what is it in full. Okay. What is an SDI? It is a policy which promotes sustainable industrial development where it is a policy we know, and it promotes sustainable industrial development where in the areas where poverty is at its highest, in the areas where unemployment is at its highest in South Africa. SDI endeavor to attract what? Infrastructure and investment where in underdeveloped areas. You do know that South Africa has a dual characteristic. In South Africa, we have developed areas. In South Africa, we also have developing areas or underdeveloped areas. So as a result, the SDI is utilized to attract investment and infrastructure in the underdeveloped areas. But there is a main objective of SDIs. What is that? To stimulate economic growth and to stimulate employment opportunities where in these underdeveloped areas, in these areas where poverty is still at its highest, where unemployment is still at its highest. Let's continue. This will be possible only if there is a partnership. We call it a triple P partnership, where there is a private sector, there is a public sector, which is the government. Together, if they collaborate and work together, the SDIs can be possible. How does the triple P work? It works where government, when looking at the SDI projects, the government provide the infrastructure that is needed, ensuring that you'll find that the area that is earmarked for industrial development, it's in the rural areas. There's no water, no electricity, no railway lines, no international airport, etc. But the government can make sure that the infrastructure is available, and then the private sector or the investor will provide what? Capital to establish the business, will bring machinery, will bring raw materials, resources for manufacturing, and will create jobs. We do have examples in South Africa of SDIs. For now, I will just only highlight this example: KwaZulu-Natal SDI, Fish River SDI. I want us to look at corridors, because corridors are also part of SDIs. After looking at corridors, then I will show you all the examples of SDIs in South Africa and corridors. And some of these SDIs, they go as far as they go beyond the borders of South Africa and overlap into other neighboring countries. But we also have those SDIs and corridors that are found inside South Africa. Okay, corridors. What is a corridor? A corridor is not a passage in the house which separates rooms. It is not a passage in a particular residence which separates the houses. In economics, a corridor is a tract of land which forms a passage, but an economic passage, allowing access from one area to another. So that if in one region the focus is agro-processing, that will also spill over to the next region. So corridors are a tract of land that forms a passageway which allow economic activities to take place between one region and the other region. They are developed as part of regional development, and they are also part of SDI. We do have examples. We have Coast to Coast Corridor. We have Maputo Development Corridor. Somebody saying, but ma'am, we are in South Africa. Yes, I mentioned that some of these corridors can go beyond our borders of the country, where you find that the very same Maputo Development Corridor starts in Gauteng, stretches to Mpumalanga, and go to Maputo. Hence, it is part of our economics lesson. Now let me take you through what I promised you. I promised you to give you examples of SDIs. I promised to give you even the focus of each. We have KwaZulu-Natal SDI. It focuses on manufacturing, which is industrial. We also have the Wild Coast SDI, which focuses on agriculture and tourism. We have the Fish River SDI, which focuses on manufacturing, which is industrial. We have the West Coast Investment Initiative. It focuses on industrial and agri-processing, the processing of agricultural produce. We have Coast to Coast Corridor. It focuses on transport and tourism. Okay. We also have, for example, the Platinum SDI, which focuses on mining and agriculture as well as tourism. The Palabra SDI focuses on industrial and agri-tourism. Maputo Development Corridor focuses on industrial and agri-processing. Lubombo SDI focuses on agri-tourism. We have Richards Bay Initiative, which focuses on mining, industrial and agri-processing. According to our exam guideline, the 2021, and I hope you are utilizing that document. it's a national document. According to the 2021 examination guideline, you need to know where these SDIs and corridors are found in the South African map. You need to know where they are located. Let's quickly do that. Let's start with Maputo Development Corridor. We know that Maputo is found in Mozambique, but you need to know where exactly does the Maputo Corridor start. I mentioned that it starts in Gauteng and stretches to Mpumalanga and to Maputo. It starts in Gauteng province. We have number 2, Lubombo Corridor. Number 2, this is Libombo. And then where do we find it? In the KwaZulu-Natal province. We have Richards Bay, which is number 3. Where do we find it? This is number 3. It's again in KwaZulu-Natal province. Number 4, we have Wild Coast SDI. This is number 4, Wild Coast SDI. Where do we find it? We find it in the Eastern Cape province. We also have number 5, Fish River, which is also found where? In the Eastern Cape. We also have number 6, West Coast Investment SDI. Number 6, where is it found? In the Western Cape. We have number 7, Platinum SDI. We find it in Rustenburg in the Northwest province. We have the number 8. Where is number 8? This is number 8. The Phalaborwa SDI. Phalaborwa is found where? In Limpopo province. And lastly, we also have Coast to Coast Corridor. Remember the beyond our borders. That is next to Namibia. But it stretches there into Gauteng. That's where it moves. Okay. Then let's move. We're still doing South Africa's initiatives or endeavors in regional development. We're done with SDIs, we're done with corridors. Now let's look at industrial development zones. This is a terminology. For 2 marks, you need to know what is an IDZ or what is an industrial development zone. There are keywords that I want you to master in this particular term. Number 1, you need to know that they are IDZ are purpose built. There is a purpose. There is a reason why we have this IDZ. The purpose is that whatever industry that is found there should produce goods and export them. The purpose is for exportation. Hence, they are known as purpose built. They are purpose built what? They are purpose built industrial estate, which means where they are found, it will be only industries, no residents, no houses, nothing else but industries. And they are physically enclosed. These keywords I want you to master. They are physically enclosed. Either where these industries are found, there is a fence around it or a big wall around it. That is another element or feature of IDZ. The last one is that they should be linked to an international port or an international harbor or an international airport. There must be an airport or a harbor nearby. Why? Remember, the purpose is for export, so that exportation of goods can be easier through the international port or the international harbor. I now think that you understand. But those industries that are found in an IDZ, they enjoy benefit. They enjoy benefits. Those benefits, we call them duty-free imports. What does this mean? If your industry is found in that industrial estate of an IDZ, whenever you import raw materials from other countries, your business will not pay import duty. Whenever you're exporting goods from the IDZ to other countries, you won't pay export duty. Okay. Previously, we had IDZs. Underline previously. Previously, we had 5 IDZ in South Africa. Let's look at them. We had the Kucha IDZ, which is located in Eastern Cape. It focused on what? On steel and auto components, those parts which are used for manufacturing of vehicles. We also have OR Tambo International Airport, which is found in our province, Gauteng, and it focuses on high-tech industries. We have East London IDZ, which is found where? First, you need to know where it's found, because you can be given a map for you to identify where these IDZs are found. So it is found in Eastern Cape, and it focuses on vehicles. We have Saldanha Bay IDZ, which is found in the Western Cape, and it focuses on steel. Lastly, we have Richards Bay IDZ, which is found in the KwaZulu-Natal, and it focuses on metals. These IDZs, they are no longer called IDZ. They've been converted into SEZ. Let me simplify it by just saying they have been converted into special economic zones. But before I tell you those special economic zones and what a special economic zone is, let's look at the shortcomings of this IDZ, because our 2021 exam guideline want us to know what are the shortcomings of IDZ, what made IDZ to fail, what were the weaknesses. Why are we now focusing on special economic zones? Number one, that the IDZ failed to attract foreign investors. Remember where an IDZ is. It was supposed to be investors establishing businesses there. So it failed to attract more investors. Number two, why? Because the financial benefits that were offered to investors were not attractive. They only gave them the benefit to import raw materials free from import duty and to export free from export duty. That was not attractive enough for investors to move their industries to where an IDZ is located. Another thing, they were restricted to an international airport or port. You couldn't start an IDZ anywhere where there's no port or there's no international airport. And they only focused on exportation, they were not focused on the domestic market. They lacked supporting industries. Supporting industries were situated far away from the IDZ, and there were shortage of skills for those who will produce goods for the export market. And there was also shortage of infrastructure, communication, transport, energy, you name them, electricity, etc. So that is why there were challenges. Other challenges are that this IDZ, they failed to create more sustainable jobs. And government took the exclusive ownership and management without involving private sector. Without private sector or without investors, then IDZ failed. And there was an absence of comprehensive framework and strategic planning and guidance. Hence, they failed. The operational cost of this IDZ were very high as compared to the income that was received from rentals. So it was very expensive to even operate this IDZ. So as a result, we ended up having them being converted into SEZs. We have the Section 39 of the SEZ Act 2014, which states that all IDZ in operation before 9 February 2016 will by law convert to SEZ. So those 5 IDZ that I explained to you, they now are called SEZ because of the SEZ Act of 2014. Even if you find that the name did not change, but they must operate as SEZ. Even if you find some they still called IDZ, but in operation they are actually SEZs. Okay, MEM has been going all along saying SEZ, SEZ. What is an SEZ? It is a special economic zone in full, but you need to know how to describe it. It is a geographically demarcated area where specific economic activities have been identified to be developed. So these SEZ are not physically enclosed. They are geographically demarcated areas, meaning that they're not even physically enclosed. And They create a basis for a broader range of industrial parks. Where you'll find them, they will be industries and they are regarded as industrial park, but they provide economic infrastructure to enable the effective clustering of value adding and employment enhancing manufacturing. So in those SEZ, the main focus is to change the natural state of a raw material into a final product, hence value adding. And they're focusing on those industries that they will enhance jobs. They will create more jobs. So what I want you to know is that this SEZ can be found anywhere. Whether there is an international airport or an international harbor nearby, it doesn't matter. They can be found anywhere in the country. They're not restricted to a harbor or an international airport. Let us look at them. They enjoy incentives such as tax relief. If your business is located in an SEZ, it will enjoy tax relief and support system from the government to promote the industrial development. Some of these incentives are a reduction of 15% corporate tax rate. Isn't this attractive? This is very attractive. Do the IDZ have this benefit? No. Another benefit is a building allowance. Businesses which are found in an SEZ can qualify for a building allowance. They can also qualify for employment tax incentive or employment subsidy so that they can be able to employ the right human resource. They also qualify for a 12I tax allowance, but the 12I tax allowance is only for those SEZ which are focusing on green tech manufacturing, which use clean and safe technology which does not harm the environment. Why SEZ? Let's look at the aims. SEZ, they act as a magnet for investment in key growth areas. You saw the financial incentives are attractive, so it will attract foreign investors and local investors. It aims to enable the development of new industrial regions. It does not neglect existing industries only. It does not only focus on them, it also looks at the new industrial regions through the establishments of new industrial hubs. And the existing ones, what will happen to them? They will be strengthened. They also serve a purpose of export promotion. I know you know what export promotion is. Encouragement of industries to produce goods and sell them in other countries. Yes, SEZ will also do the same. And they will also serve to be enterprise development, to develop entrepreneurship in their country. They will also be used to renew an urban area or to develop a rural area, and they also support the domestic market, unlike IDZ, which focused on export market. Then you can be asked for 8 marks to briefly discuss or explain the benefit of SEZ in the economy. Number 1, we will benefit from SEZ because they will attract foreign investors who will establish industries in South Africa, in the neglected areas, in the underdeveloped areas where poverty still is high. They will also assist in establishing what? New product lines. They don't look at current product lines only. Even the establishment of new product lines, and they further expand their operations. They support innovation. Okay, SEZ. They also create more employment for people in the neighborhood. Remember IDZ created job opportunities for people nearer to the international airport or a harbor. Those people who are near. So with SEZ, because they are found everywhere, so people in those neighborhoods can enjoy the benefit of being employed. And if we have more and more of this SEZ, more goods will be produced. And if more goods are produced, economic growth will also improve. And they also help to promote effective use of resources. Those resources which are found in the underdeveloped areas will be underlocked. Okay, what do we call? They will be utilized efficiently. Okay, they will be utilized efficiently. I think that is the correct word. They will be used efficiently. Then I have emphasized that SEZ, they also focus on domestic market and the world market so that our local industries can also benefit. Okay. I have examples. I will just mention them. I have examples of SEZ that are found in South Africa. You just need to know for enrichment purpose, you need to know which SEZ are found in South Africa. We have Atlantis SEZ. We have 11 of them. Ne? Atlantis is one of them. Atlantis SEZ is found where? In the Western Cape, and it focuses on green tech manufacturing. It will qualify for that 12I tax allowance. Okay, green tech, I mentioned that it refers to green technologies that reduce or reverse the impact of people on the planet, the impact of environmental damage, such as pollution. Remember, pollution affects us as human beings. I will just list them. Okay, this is for enrichment purpose. We also have Coega SEZ. It was an IDZ, and it is found where? In the Nelson Mandela Bay, in the Eastern Cape. It focuses on what? Agro-processing, automotive, aquaculture, energy, metals, logistics and business, process service sectors. We also have OR Tambo SEZ. It was an IDZ before. It is found in our own province. Okay. And then it focuses on beneficiation of precious metals and minerals. I mentioned to you that beneficiation takes place when the state of a mineral, because a mineral is a raw material, when the state of a mineral is transformed and processed into a value-added product. Okay, that's what OR Tambo specialize in. Okay, we have the East London SEZ. It was an IDZ. It's located where? Is in the Eastern Cape Province, and it's focusing on what? On automotive, agro-processing, and aquaculture. We also have Saldanha Bay IDZ, which used to be an IDZ, but because of the SEZ Act, it now must operate as an SEZ. It's found in the Western Cape, and it serves as the primary oil, gas, and marine repair, engineering, and logistics services complex in South Africa. Another one is the Richards Bay. It used to be an IDZ, it's now an SEZ. It's found in the KwaZulu-Natal province. It focuses on what? On manufacturing and storage of minerals and products, and it boosts beneficiation, investment, economic growth, development of skills, and employment. Okay, let us look at another one is the Nkomazi SEZ, which is found where? In the Mpumalanga province, and it focuses on agro-processing, and it is supported by mixed services such as warehousing and logistics. We have another SEZ. They are 11, guys. Maluti Apofung SEZ, which is found in the Free State province. Okay, Maluti Apofung is found in the Free State province, and it focuses on what? It is well suited and licensed for general manufacturing. Okay. And this SEZ also focuses on agro-processing industries. They process agricultural products. We have the Musina Makhado SEZ, which is found in the Limpopo province. In the Limpopo province, the Musina, that is why there is a slash between Musina and Makhado. Musina focuses on light industries and agro-processing, whereas the Makhado focuses on metallurgical and mineral beneficiation complex. Okay, we also have Dube Trade Port SEZ, which is found in the KwaZulu Natal, and it is the only facility in Africa that brings together an international airport, cargo terminal, warehousing, offices, retail sector, hotels, and agricultural area. We also have another one in our own province, the Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone, which is found in Gauteng province. So the proximity of this particular SEZ is an established automotive industry which allows for increased economies of scale and scope. It helps in lowering the cost of doing business. Okay, it offers world-class customized solution. It offers incentives, support systems, and systems for manufacturers seeking excellence and a productive and progressive location. Like I've mentioned, you need to know where they are found. For example, this is your Kucha, you find it where? In the Western Cape. This is your East London IDZ, you find it in the Eastern Cape. You have your Limpopo. In Limpopo, what do you find? You find your Musina Makado SEZ. In Mpumalanga, you find what? Your Nkomazi SEZ. So you need to know where they are found. Your Maluti Apofung, you'll find it in the Free State. So your Saldanha Bay SEZ, you'll find it in the Western Cape. You need to know where exactly they are found. Your Dube Port Trade, you'll find it in the KZN. Now, let's move to the interesting part, which is assessment. I have with me typical examples of questions that you might come across during the exams. But they're not exactly the questions that will be in the exams. They are the ones that you can use for practicing. There's many of them, but I only selected a few. Why? To just instill in you the skill of answering these types of questions. For now, we will take a 2-minute break, and then when I come back, we'll look at these particular types of questions and how you're supposed to answer them. Don't go away, just drink water and come back. We are back. Let's look at the typical examples. Remember, I said they are examples. This is not what examiners will exactly ask you, but they are examples. There are more questions that can be asked. In section A, question 1.3, you can be asked to identify certain concepts, the examiner can just give you the description, and you're not supposed to write any abbreviation or acronym. Okay, so let's look at the first one. An example: a department which provides a competitive, socially responsible environment for investment, trade, and enterprise development. We both know that is the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. You cannot write DTIC. And remember, don't write Department of Trade and Industry. It's no longer called that. You won't get marks. It's the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Number 2, the process of transforming mineral to a higher value product which can be consumed locally or exported. That one we know that is a beneficiation. Okay. So let's move to number 3. A purpose-built industrial estate linked to an airport or seaport with export as the main objective. You cannot write IDZ. You will have to write it in full. The answer is Industrial Development Zone. Initiatives to attract infrastructure and business investment to neglected and underdeveloped areas. This one is a special development initiative. Special development initiative. You can't write SDI. You won't get marks. It must be written in full. No IDZ, no SDI. You can also be asked to name any K, and then you can do that. Let's go back. Okay. Let's go back. Yes, you can write the abbreviation NIPF. NIPF. You can write the abbreviation EPAP. That is fine. It's section B. You can also be asked to list any 2 SEZ, for example. Even the corridors, you can be asked to list any corridors. You can be asked to list any SDIs. But in this example, I chose this one, to list any 2 SEZ. Remember, they are 11. Don't give us all the 11. You can choose only 2, either Atlantis or Kucha, Malutapo Fung SEZ, which are the one that you will remember. Okay. I have other questions, okay, where you can be asked to name any 2 industrial development strategies. Abbreviations are allowed. You can write NRDS or National Research and Development Strategy. You can also write IMS or Integrated Manufacturing Strategy. Remember, if you write something wrong, instead of saying Integrated Manufacturing Strategy, you write Industrial Manufacturing Strategy. It's wrong. Or you write Integrated Manufacturing System. It's wrong. So if you have forgotten the real wording, rather write an abbreviation. Because it is a section B question, you will get your marks. We have 2 short questions of middle order. 2 short questions of middle order. When you answer these questions, you don't list, you won't get marks. Write in full sentences. Let's look at the first one. What is the aim of the government with the adoption of regional development policy? You can write that to assist with the promotion of a more spread of industries so that capital and labor can be directed towards underdeveloped areas. Or you can write that the aim is to establish more industries even in the underdeveloped areas, or to prevent concentration and centralization of industries in one area. It's still fine. Can you see that this is a full sentence? This is how you required to answer. But let's go back. We have another question. I want us to look at another short questions that I've skipped. Okay. How can the introduction of special economic zones benefit the economy of South Africa? This simply means that explain to us the advantages of SEZ, the benefit of SEZ to the economy. And this question is a 2-mark question, but it can also be an 8-mark question. Okay. As a 2-mark question, obviously, you will tell us, what have I done? Okay, let's go back. I want to guide you. On how to answer this particular question. Yes. If it is a 2-mark question, you will mention that it will help in attracting more foreign investors in South Africa. You can mention that it assists in businesses that establish new product lines. Remember, I explained this benefits to you. It will create more employment for the people in the neighborhood. But if it is for 2 marks, only one full sentence is fine. But if it is for 8 marks, then you will need 4 points. You'll have to even mention that it increases productivity and economic growth. It focuses on both domestic production and exports if it is an 8-mark question. Okay, this is a data response question. You will find it again in section B. You are given data. Here is a map. Here is a South African map. If you don't know where your IDZs are, where your SDIs are, and you are asked questions about them, you won't be able to respond. Okay, let me take you through just the questions. 10.1.1, name the former industrial development zone located at point A in the above map. Where is point A? Here is point A. If you don't know which former industrial development zone is found there, you won't get it right. Number 10.1.2. What is the focus of the SDI located at number 3 here at Phalaborwa? What is the focus? Remember I said terminology is good to know it for section A or question 1 and also for data response. Look at 10.1.3. Describe briefly the term corridor. So it is important that you know corridors. 10.1.4, explain one shortcoming of industrial development zone. This one you'll have to explain it in full, even the corridor in a full sentence. The last one is a question whereby in most cases you won't find the answer in the textbook, but you need to link the theory that you learned in class with what is actually happening in the economy. The question says, how could industrial development zone improve local socio-economic conditions? In simple terms, what are the benefits of an IDZ? Hence the marks are more, hence it is 4 marks. So let me take you through how you should respond. Name the former industrial development zone located at A. Remember I said Saldanha Bay is found where? In the Western Cape. So the moment you see Cape Town, it must hint to you that it is Saldanha Bay. What is the focus of the SDI located at number 3? The moment you see Phalaborwa, remember Phalaborwa is an SDI. You need to remember that, Phalaborwa focuses on what? Industrial and agri-tourism. Remember, even Phalaborwa is nearer to the Kruger National Park. So that is why even tourism is part of the answer. Briefly describe the term corridor. You know it by heart now. After this lesson, I think you'll know it by heart. It's a tract of land that forms a passageway allowing access from one area to another. Shortcomings of an IDZ. It can be an 8-mark question, but here is a 2-mark question. You will mention that it failed to attract more investors, foreign investors. The financial incentives that were available were not attractive for investors. It was restricted to an international port or a harbor. You can mention it focused only on export market, but because it's a 2-mark, give us 1 full sentence. The last one, how could industrial development zone improve local socio-economic condition? Do you see that I have about 4 answers here, meaning that it is a 4-mark question, but it can also be an 8-mark question of a higher cognitive level. So you can mention that it provides job opportunities for unemployed people in and around the IDZ. You can also mention that it improves the skills of the people who are employed in an IDZ. It can also alleviate poverty by improving the standard of living, and the very same improved infrastructure for IDZ can be also used by the local people of that area. You get your 10 out of 10, as simple as that. There is another type of question. This question is an 8-mark question. You can be asked to briefly discuss the aim of regional development. This one I addressed it during the lesson presentation. So you need to mention, but in 4 points. If you only list, you will get to a maximum of 4 marks. But if you write in full sentences, you will get to a maximum of 8 marks. Comparison between an IDZ and SEZ is another paragraph question of 8 marks of a middle order. So what you explain on your left, you should explain on your right. Okay, so if you say that IDZ are purpose-built industrial estates which are physically enclosed, which are linked to an airport or a port, you need to mention something this side. Either you'll mention that the SEZ are not linked to an international airport or port. They can be found anywhere, or they are industrial parks which do not need to be located near a port or an international airport. You will also mention that goods produced under IDZ, goods produced are sold for export market only. But when it comes to SEZ, goods produced can be sold to the domestic market and international market. You can also mention that IDZ, they offer less financial incentives to attract investors, whereas the SEZ offer more financial incentives, such as the 15% reduction in corporate tax. You can even mention the others. But because it's an 8-mark question, 2 points for industrial development zone will be required. 2, you get your 4 this side, and 2, you get your 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. If you give us only 4 points for industrial development zone, you didn't show us the difference. We will only mark, if I'm a marker, I will only mark 2 because you didn't show us the comparison. Now let's move to a question of a higher order. Paragraph question of a higher order. You can be asked to answer this type of a question. How can the implementation of regional development policy improve the standard of living in South Africa? That's where you need to apply your mind, apply your knowledge. What you learned in the classroom, you link it with what is practically happening in the economy. You can mention that implementation of regional development will limit the effects of economic centralization and decentralizes operation into neglected areas. Instead of having concentration of industries in 4 main areas, we can have a decentralization of industries. We can have industries even in other sections of the country or other regions of the country. It also attempts to promote the advantages of more even regional development by using labor, natural resources and infrastructure in neglected areas. So it unlocks, it unlocks, this is the word that I want. It unlocks the potential of a poorer area. It unlocks labor, unlocks natural resources, unlocks infrastructure in those neglected areas so that they can be developed. It also alleviates large-scale unemployment. In simple terms, it creates more jobs. Okay, for 4 points, which can take us to 8 marks. It also directs foreign direct investment into the rural areas that will lead to infrastructure development. The same infrastructure will be used by the locals. Let's look at the last question. You can be asked to advise the Minister of DTIC. You advising the Minister of Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Okay, so the question is phrased like this, and it's also a higher order question. Advise the government on how to promote industrial development in South Africa. In this lesson, I told you about the PPP, private-public sector partnership. You can advise the government to form collaborative partnership with private sector companies that show substantial commitment to invest in areas that are aligned with policy objectives. You can also advise the government to provide tax incentives and reliefs for young industries, not only for existing industries. You can advise the government to provide the basic infrastructure which is needed for industrial development. You can advise the government to provide funding schemes to start new businesses for support, growth, and development. You can also, okay, I've mentioned all this, and they're not in your textbooks. Why? You will be required to link what you learned with what is happening. So you can advise the government to provide skills development programs and offer cash grants as incentives to those who engage in these capacity development programs. You can also advise the government to stop neglecting larger firms by not putting too much emphasis on smaller firms only. So both smaller firms and larger firms can be supported by the government without neglecting the other. You can also advise the government to strengthen competition policy so that this counter higher levels of industry concentration and anti-competitive behavior. So this will avoid concentration of businesses in one area, and this will also prevent these industries to merge illegally or to abuse power by charging higher prices and exploiting the consumers. You can also advise the government to reduce the cost of doing business. You know what? Electricity prices are high, and the government can influence the price of electricity. The petrol and diesel prices are very expensive, and the government has a say in increasing or reducing those prices. So government can also assist in reducing the cost of doing businesses. For example, by reducing electricity cost, logistic cost, which affect smaller businesses, and many of them, they are forced to be bankrupt because of this particular cost. So these are the things that you can advise the government to do. So this brings us to the end of this particular lesson. Thank you. See you next time.